Dr. Fauci says he's optimistic about the COVID-19 vaccine for early next year. Election night, more like election week. We've got a couple of results from last night, but the rest will have to wait. And play ball, we've got a baseball season, but it's not going to be like anything we've seen before. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, June 24th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hi, Carlo. Good morning.
Jill, you sound amazing. We have these new microphones, and everybody who has been writing in complaining about either your audio or my audio, it's a whole new ball game over here because we've got professional
we hear
mics.
You.
We seriously do. The feedback works because we got Cheddar to send us our real podcasting mics while we're stuck at home. So hopefully this is a little better.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate the feedback because we take it to heart. Some of it we send to our bosses, and so we appreciate it. And that's why if you're watching on YouTube, we've got a whole new look. And if you're listening, hopefully we sound a lot better. All right, let's get to some news because, as usual,
there's a lot of news today.
There's a ton of it. All right, for everyone who has been missing Dr. Fauci recently, I think I have. He was back in the spotlight yesterday testifying before House committee about the government's response to coronavirus. A couple of the big headlines. He says he is cautiously optimistic that a COVID-19 vaccine will be ready by the end of the year or early 2021. He also says the country's pandemic response was a, quote, mixed bag so far. That's probably on the more generous side. One other thing, he was also asked about school in the fall and just this idea of what it could potentially look like. I think the big takeaway is that it's going to be totally dependent case by case on where you are in the country. And it sounds like, unfortunately, for people who want to just have some semblance of planning and be able to kind of predict what's going to happen, it's going to be so dependent on the actual situation on the ground in the week or two leading up to school that it's really hard to have any sort of idea of what it could be. So more uncertainty for parents out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, we don't have a cohesive response, right? It's like there's like three different countries inside the United States when it comes to this virus and where people are at. First of all, as you said, Jill, it was nice to hear Dr. Fauci and get some proof of life because I feel like we're all so like this country is so traumatized that like you don't. Like what planet are we on where like you don't hear the infectious disease expert for a couple of weeks and you're like, is he all right? Did something happen to Fauci? That's actually what my wife said yesterday. She's like, oh, I'm glad to hear he's okay. Glad to see he's okay. Like, oh my God.
And I'm laughing just because of like relief. I agree with you.
Yeah, seriously. He also broke with President Trump and said that he was never told to slow down virus testing, which of course the president said at that rally over the weekend, which the White House then said he was joking, which I guess he was. I don't know what.
No,
what
but
to
then
make of
the
that.
president, by the way, came out and said he wasn't kidding.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
I don't know if
really?
you thought that. Yeah, the president said, "I don't kid."
It's God, Jill, this is our job, and you can't even keep up with it. Like, how are normal, like regular people supposed to keep up with this? It's just mind-boggling. But you got just on Dr. Fauci, like the guy's got the hardest, maybe the worst job in America this year. He's trying to manage this health crisis. He's got, there's a government that he's working with that's completely incompetent, a president that he has to sort of like keep, happy, but keep him from getting fired. I think we've made a lot of mistakes, but I do think that Dr. Fauci, he's been a pretty good communicator, generally speaking.
I do also want to note cases are rising. Actually, so across this country in many states, they're rising so quickly in Texas that the governor is now urging Texans to stay home. He says cases are climbing at an unacceptable rate. So he said there's no reason really, except for frontline responders to have to leave their houses. Houston, Texas is now on pace to become the worst affected city in the country. That would be even worse than New York City, if you could imagine. Health officials in Houston are concerned the hospitals are going to be running out of beds. California also seeing a new high. Those, by the way, are the two most populous states in the country. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it's the younger people who are getting infected now, so they get better and the death rate is going down. But the truth of the matter is, Dr. Fauci said yesterday, we don't know yet. Hospitalizations and deaths are such a lagging indicator, as we've been talking about. And case in point, by the way, most health officials are attributing the spike that we're seeing now at the end of June to Memorial Day, about a month ago. So that just tells you, I mean, Memorial Day to me feels like it was also another year ago, but that just tells you this thing is very slow moving. So when you're trying to find cause and effect and what are the impacts, also younger people they're finding under 50 are going to the hospital at an extremely high rate as well. So we are not out of the woods.
No, not by a long shot. Also, I mean, it's, California and Texas, talk about two, diametrically opposed states in just about every way, and they're both getting hit hard. It just shows you, this virus is not a political thing. It's going to go where it can go, right? So it's incumbent upon us to slow the spread. The other thing overseas, Jill, the Hajj was essentially just canceled. Saudi Arabia says they're only going to let about 1,000 pilgrims go to Mecca this year. The Hajj usually takes place, I think, in a few weeks from now in the summer. Usually it's 2.5, 3 million people. So I mean, they're basically canceling it. This is a huge deal. This is the biggest annual gathering of Muslims. It's one of the biggest gatherings of humans in the world. So I think it's probably probably a good sign. I'm also reading a book right now, a novel where I don't know why I'm reading this book right now, but the story is about a pandemic and it starts at the Hajj. So
what's it called?
It's called The End of October by Lawrence Wright, who's a New Yorker writer who dabbles in novels. But it's actually maybe I'll do this for Love Hate Hate this week because it's amazing. This book came out amid the pandemic, but he wrote it before any of this started, and it basically tracks with what's happening now. It's crazy.
Okay, cool. And I'm happy you're reading and not just, watching Netflix. Like
I told myself I have to get back to reading novels or I'm going to go crazy. So that's my summer goal.
All right, good for you, Carlo. Okay, so things are so bad, by the way, in the U.S. right now that the European Union is reportedly planning to ban Americans from flying into the EU countries because of how poorly the U.S. has controlled the spread of coronavirus. So this would put the U.S. in the same category as Brazil and Russia on a list of nations whose citizens would be barred from traveling to Europe when its borders reopen on July 1st.
I find this to be so embarrassing. When this story came out in the New York Times yesterday, it really actually hit me I felt humiliated to be an American, and I feel bad saying that, but I really did, Jill. I mean, I've been trying to stay optimistic on coronavirus lately because so many people have told me I need to try and find the silver linings in this story, and there are a lot of silver linings. I mean, where we are right now is a silver lining, right?
In New York, you mean?
Yeah, the New York comeback right now is incredible. It's a prime example of, I think, a lot of mistakes were made in the beginning, but it's what's happening now is remarkable. But for us to be for the European Union, where this thing was raging out of control before it even came here, for them to say, guys, you do not have it together. If you want to come here this summer, you can't. It's not even effectively that big of a deal because I don't think that many Americans are trying to travel to Europe this summer. But it's just what a just embarrassing state of affairs for the United States that we're on a list with Brazil and Russia in terms of countries that have not gotten it together with this. It's sad.
Well, the other thing I point that Carlo, you and I had been making for a long time is, you have to weigh the economic impact with the health impact. And it feels like we had a government, at least on the federal level and in some states as well, which are now seeing rises, that were so focused on the economic impact and downplaying the health impact. They go hand in hand. You can't
Yeah.
separate them. So this whole idea of not wearing face masks and just getting back to business, okay, fine. If there's no pandemic and the virus goes away, like okay, whatever, but it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense because the virus spreads much more easily without a face mask.
Right.
And if there's more cases, you ultimately people aren't going to go out. And you're going to have to shut down anyway. So the whole idea was you shut down, as we've been talking about. You shut down. You take more precautions right away. You treat this more seriously even than perhaps you have to immediately, and you do it for however long you need, and then you can open back up
Right.
in a safe manner.
Well,
I
and
don't know,
also,
but
and
the
also,
idea
Jill,
that right, just this idea of separating the economic stuff, you can't
right.
separate it. It's all connected.
Well, and also the point of the early shutdowns was to buy us some time to figure these things out, right? So, but the thing that makes me so like frustrated is when I see pictures of like people in lines to at restaurants with no social distancing, in states like Texas, for instance, like what they should at least be doing the bare minimum, right? Like keep the tables 6 feet apart, have these plexiglass barriers, like all these sort of like creative things that you're seeing now in places like New York. I'm just surprised that that hasn't really caught on in the rest of the country, because it seems like one of those things where it's just in everybody's best interest, um, to just that we and just the appreciation that we can't go back to normal yet, right?
So I remember sitting in our makeup room at Cheddar about probably 4 months ago now. It was in, I think, February, and there
Yeah.
was an article written, and it escapes me where, if it was Newsweek or The Atlantic, and it was written by a hospital, a doctor in Italy, and the title of it was like a message to Americans. It was sort of like a
Yeah.
letter to Americans. And the title was something like, "We didn't listen to China. And look at what happened here in
Right.
Italy. Listen to us." And I feel there's part of me that feels like my message as a New Yorker to the other parts of the country would have been, listen to us and what's happening here
Yeah.
in New York. I mean, we literally have trucks for bodies outside of hospitals right now because so many people are losing their lives to this. And it feels like that same thing. It's like no one's learning the lessons from the places that had the issues before. And the thinking is still, oh, it's not going to happen here.
Right. I mean, I guess the only thing with that is that is optimistic is, because it's younger people getting sick. I think what that does show is people are learning to protect the most vulnerable people, right? So I do think
Right.
that we have gotten better as a country in, telling grandma and grandpa, like, you can't go out, like we'll bring your groceries to you. I think that that's probably something that's happening across the country more, and that's a hopeful sign, right? Because that's
And
that's why the death rate's down.
here in New York, I do fear. I don't want us to get complacent, and I feel like I come on this podcast and then we're like, "Nah, nah, 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 nah." But look, I
Yeah.
get it. I mean, I'm at my wits' end also, and I feel like even I'm taking risks that I sometimes think, should I
Sure.
have done that? And I see people, and I try to do stuff outside, but I like, you understand the human nature part of this, where you can only
Totally.
keep people locked up for just so
Totally.
long.
Right.
On that note, by the way, the Macy's 4th of July Spectacular is going to be happening in New York City this year, although there are going to be some significant changes. So this is super interesting how they're doing this. Starting next week, there's going to be a series of short fireworks shows in each of the city's 5 boroughs, and that's going to be followed by a grand finale on July 4th that will be televised. But the city is keeping the sites a secret so that people don't congregate.
I don't really know how they're going to do that, because if you've ever seen how this happens, like the fireworks are shot from these gigantic barges in the river that say Macy's on them. So it seems like if you see those sort of floating around out there, it's going to be a pretty good indication of where the fireworks are coming from. But the other thing on the fireworks, Jill, I don't know if this is happening elsewhere in the country, but there's been a lot of stories here in New York, and especially in Brooklyn, where I am, about the amount of illegal fireworks going off every night, and it really is bananas. It's like it's gotten a little better this week, but it feels like you're in a war zone. Um, So I don't know. I'm curious if that's something that other people, especially people in other urban areas, are noticing. And I don't know why that is. I know there's all these conspiracy theories that like the police are doing some sort of like psyop and trying to set these fireworks off to get. I don't really know what the conspiracy theory is, but um, I don't know why all these fireworks are going off, but it's definitely notable. And I'm curious if other people have noticed it. Probably not so much
I
out in
have.
Long Island. Oh,
No, no,
really?
no. Yes, because I go to bed obviously before they
Yeah, me
even
too.
start, but my dog goes crazy
Oh yeah.
at the fireworks. So I get woken up almost every night, and I'm like, why is he barking? And then I realize it's the fireworks that are making him crazy. So
I guess
the
it's
thinking is mostly that the people are bored in their homes.
yeah, it's
Firework
probably
sales are
nothing.
way up.
Right. It's probably nothing more than that. I guess that makes sense. But it's just the sound of like, cherry bombs and whatnot going off every night, like, and you still got like the NYPD helicopters hovering overhead. We're gonna look back on this year, and I don't know what if we make it through, I think we'll laugh. I hope.
Oh, I hope so. Okay, yesterday, by the way, was an election day, so we have a couple of results, but still not final calls in a lot of the biggest primaries, given how many people voted absentee. But there are several takeaways the morning after. New York's Congressman Elliot Engel has likely been defeated by a progressive newcomer, Jamal Bowman. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, easily won her primary against Michelle Caruso Cabrera. So we were talking about that yesterday. So
Mhm.
yes, that was yesterday, and it's neck and neck in Kentucky between Amy McGrath and Charles Booker. Although we will not likely get results there for another week or so.
Yeah, those are the two who were vying to take on Mitch McConnell in that race in November for the Senate. Now, here's the takeaway that I think we saw from last night. President Trump's iron grip on the Republican Party may not be so ironclad anymore. Check this out: a 24-year-old real estate investor won in a North Carolina district, with the district being vacated by Mark Meadows, who is now the president's chief of staff. This guy, Madison Cawthorn, 24 years old, easily beat Meadows' handpicked replacement, who was endorsed by the president himself. The president actually recorded a robocall for this candidate. She also had a 2-to-1 fundraising advantage. Didn't in the old days that would be a guaranteed victory. So I think that this is the most important result of the night. I don't know if it's more generational. This guy, again, very young. He's also very handsome. Take a look at this guy.
Very,
He look
yes,
he
I
looks like a
agree.
GQ model. Maybe that was it.
He really
Um,
does.
yeah. Um, but he will almost certainly win in November, because this is a deep red district in North Carolina. And he will become the youngest member of Congress, I believe, in modern history. I think you can't even be in Congress until you're 25, and he's not even 25 yet. So his birthday, will happen before he is elected. But that's incredible, and it's just I think it's probably a sign of things to come, based on
Well, he's
just based on the poll.
25. You're not a millennial anymore, right? That's Gen Z.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
he'd be the first Gen Z congressman.
Yeah. He would have been born in like 1996. Jeez, that's
When did
crazy.
we get so old, Carlo?
I know. I feel it every
Um,
day.
okay, also a bunch of sports updates. Major League Baseball is on. The MLB is going to have a shortened season. Opening day is set for July 23rd or 24th. The league and the players agreed on safety protocols for the 60-game season, effectively ending the stalemate. Players report to camp July 1st.
Okay, good. I'm glad they got this done. Like I said, I mean, it was ugly, and I think the season's going to be super weird. There's all sorts of rules in place, everything from like a ban on spitting, to obviously there's going to be no fans in the stands, which will be strange. But good. I'm glad. Power to them that they got this done. On the sports front, though, Jill, a major update to a story we've been following this week. The FBI just determined that the noose that was found hanging in Bubba Wallace's garage stall. Bubba Wallace is the only black NASCAR driver. The FBI says that noose or whatever it was had been there since October, and Wallace was not the victim of an intentional hate crime because he wasn't assigned that stall until a couple weeks ago. So whatever that was, whether it was an actual noose or whether it was some sort of rope thing that was seen as a noose but wasn't intended to be. That I guess is at least good news that there was not a hate crime that took place there.
Also in the sports world, Novak Djokovic and his wife have both tested positive for COVID-19 after hosting a series of exhibition matches in Europe without any social distancing guidelines. The number one ranked tennis player in the world not committed to playing in the U.S. Open. And part of the reason was because he said he didn't want to deal with all of the safety protocols that were being put in place.
I used to like this guy, Novak Djokovic, because he's just so incredibly good. But I mean, I really don't like sport, like when athletes who have like really big platforms just act irresponsibly. And this guy was just acting so irresponsibly. He was holding these exhibition matches with, like you said, nothing changed. There were pictures of him last weekend, like partying in Croatia with his shirt off, like hugging people. I think he's also come out and said that he wouldn't get a vaccine. It's just very irresponsible to me.
I think you said.
But he's the best, so I guess he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, and I think he was digging at Roger Federer, who perhaps was taking this more seriously. But now he has coronavirus. Okay, finally, my favorite story of the week. We're going to end because this story had made me laugh out loud. The comedian Gilbert Gottfried threw a Zoom bat mitzvah for his daughter. And the guests got a little bit more than they bargained for. Apparently, one of the guests was a 70-year-old woman who didn't totally understand Zoom and how it all worked and whether her camera was on. So I'm going to read from page 6 now. Quote, "She was not familiar with how to work Zoom and proceeded to take off her bathing suit, get naked, and take a shower in the middle of the bat mitzvah and entirely on camera," said a giggly source. Apparently, someone remarked, "OMG, Francine is naked." If this is true, one of the things you're just like, wait, is this potentially made up? But if that's true, it is just so darn funny.
Francine is naked. I know.
And apparently
I can totally see that.
No, and apparently because she couldn't hear them, like she really just didn't know how to use it. So everyone was yelling like, "You're on camera," and she just couldn't hear them.
I have to say this is my worst nightmare, and I have not done this yet, thank God. But I mean, yesterday I was on our morning editorial call, and I had forgotten to mute, and I was just having a conversation with my wife that was just being broadcast to like 20 of our colleagues. Like, thankfully, it was pretty anodyne, but I think a lot of people are having these sort of tech issues with all of these video calls, right?
It's a whole new world.
It is.
Okay, everybody, that's what you need to know for Wednesday, June 24th. We hope that we sounded better today. Let us know.
Yes, let us know. I already broke the mic stand, so we're going to have to get new mic stands. But other than that, it's a whole new world, like you said.
You're holding it, right?
I hold it now, yeah.
Oh, Carlo. Okay, bye, everybody.